Happy Monday, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. We are into week 6 of Edge of Eternities, which will be the last best of 1, best of 3 meta review that I do for Edge of Eternities. We're at the 2-week mark, where Spider-Man is coming in 2 weeks. So next week I will be doing the early access and exploring the new cards in Spider-Man, and then we'll start things up again with week 1, maybe with some brews, and certainly by the first week we'll start talking about what the tracker says. So if you're new here, what I do is I use a third-party tracker called Untapped as a way to kind of remove my bias so that we can kind of just keep things informational and talk about what's happening each week in Best of 1. And then I also like to look at the tournament scene and kind of follow what's happening in Best of 3 and in paper. And I think it's a nice way to kind of keep a finger on what's going on in Best of 1 and Best of 3. So that being said, though, this is kind of the reason why I take a 2-week break before the next set is that a lot of people have already kind of lost interest in the set. And this week we had a little bit of a low sample size problem because it is precisely at the restart of the season. So this next week, the Diamond and Mythic data is relatively low sample because there's not a whole bunch of people who are just grinding up to Mythic in the first week. It's there, but it's not as substantial as weeks gone by. So just keep that in mind. So let's get started. According to Untapped, in first place is Dimir Midrange this week in Tier 1 with 2,000 matches out of 40,000, and it had a 61.4% win rate if you look at all of the decks in Dimir Midrange, which is the archetype as a whole. So if we compare this one to week 5, we do see a change to the most popular, most top-performing list. So we've dropped 2 Shoot the Sheriffs, we've dropped a Soulstone Sanctuary, we've dropped 2 Faebloom Tricks, which is a trick that you usually see from Best of 3 for the mirror match. And then we've dropped 3 Tragic Trajectories, which I still like the Tragic Trajectory. I think it works really well off of like being able to sack your map tokens and then be able to give something -10/-10. They are at sorcery speed though. So instead we're bringing in the 2 copies of the Preacher of the Schism. This helps out against aggro. And as we'll see in Best of 3, there was an increase in mono red, which we'll probably see an increase in mono red on the Best of 1 ladder as well. So Preacher of the Schism is nice for that matchup. Tishana's Tidebinder, we're seeing a 3rd copy being brought in here, which is kind of surprising to me. Usually we see this go in the opposite direction in Best of 1 compared to Best of 3. And then we have 3 additional copies of Nowhere to Run. And I think this showcases the anticipating the Sheltered by Ghosts showing up in Boros Burn, for example. So, yeah. And, the Tishana's Tidebinder is nice if you're up against, like, Izzet Prowess, which we do see as a pretty common archetype in Best of 1 as well. The other thing I like to do every week, and we'll just kind of go through it really quickly, is just the matchups. So this archetype is favored against Mono Green Landfall. So the more that you're seeing Mono Green Landfall, this one is well above 55%. It's a favored coin flip, meaning somewhere between 50 and 55% against Mono White Lifegain and Boros Burn. It is a 50% coin flip against mono red aggro, and it is weak against Jeskai Artifacts, so loses more than 45% of the time. So if you're coming up against a lot of Jeskai Artifacts, then Dimir Midrange is not the answer for you. The opening hand, I like to give a little bit of suggestions to, in case you're new to Magic the Gathering. So the opening hand, I'm looking for Cecil Dark Knight. It's the Spyglass Siren. Your 1-drop threats are usually good in your opening hand. Deep Cavern Bat to disrupt my opponent's hand. Tragic Trajectory if you're running it. Preacher of the Schism, also if you're running it. And then the Kaido Bane of Nightmares, because I like to give you about 16 cards. It's just personally what I like to shoot for my own mulligan strategy. And Kaido Bane of Nightmares is particularly nice if you have some early enabler to be able to get the ninjutsu. And as always, I'll just do a quick little plug. If you want to help support the channel, the best way to do that is becoming a YouTube member. I really thank those who have become YouTube members. I thank you for the support. So I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I do appreciate it. So second place was Mono Red Aggro and is in Tier 2, which means it's a standard deviation below the performance of Dimir Midrange. It also had 2,000 matches out of the 40,000 this week. Its win rate overall was 57.2% between Diamond and Mythic. And if we compare it to week 5 of Edge of Eternities, so last week's video, we see no changes to the archetype. It is favored against Izzet Prowess. It's a coin flip, so 50% against Jeskai Artifacts. It's an unfavored coin flip against Mono Black Demons and Boros Burn, and it is weak to Mono White Lifegain. The opening hand, you're looking for your Hired Claw. you're looking for your Razorkin Needlehead if you are running it. We talked about that one last week. Screaming Nemesis, which is in most lists. The Burnout Bastronaut, if you're running it, is also another good one. And then the Emberheart Challenger and the Slickshot Show-Off. Again, threats tend to do better than spells for repetitive damage. Number 3, also in Tier 2. And by the way, Tier 2 is totally viable to take to Mythic. Anything over 50% you can take to Mythic. This one was 3,000 matches out of 40,000 for a 56.7%. So the most popular pick so far on last week. And if we compare it to week 5, again, we see no changes to this archetype. It is favored against Jeskai Artifacts and Azorius Control, so the more that you're bumping into that, the better this deck will perform. It is favored against, it's a favored coin flip against Mono Red Aggro and Izzet Prowess. It is weak against Mono White Lifegain. The opening hand, you're looking for the Hired Claw, the Sheltered by Ghosts, the Grease Wrench Goblin, and because of how much we saw the Boros Burn, Shock actually made it into the top 4 in your opening hand. Personally, I really like Screaming Nemesis. It's a little bit of a bias that I have. It was the 5th one, but generally this is what I was looking for in my opening hand. If you're coming up against a lot of Boros Burn in Diamond, then maybe Shocks are a little bit better. All right, the 4th in Tier 2 is Mono White Lifegain with 2,900 matches of the 40,000 and was a 54.3% win rate. If we compare, we have to go back to week 2, which was the last time this archetype was in the top 8, and we see there were no changes to the most popular top performing list. It is favored against Mono Red Aggro and Izzet Prowess. It is a favored coin flip against Mono Green Landfall. It is an unfavored coin flip against Mono Black Demons, and it is weak against Jeskai Artifacts. The opening hand, you're looking for the Leyline of Hope. Halia, Guided by Light, if you are running it. Some lists are running that one. Essence Channeler, the Leonin Vanguard, and the Hinterland Sanctifier. Number 5 in Tier 2 with 840 matches of the 40,000 with a 54.7% win rate was Azorius Control. And if we compare this one to week 5, we also see no changes. It is favored against Mono White Lifegain and Jeskai Artifacts. It's a coin flip against Mono Black Demons, and unfavored coin flip against Mono Red Aggro, and weak to Boros Burn. The opening hand, you're looking for your Horned Lock Whale. It's nice to have the interaction to disrupt aggro as well as win condition if you're up against a slower matchup. The No More Lies I look for in my opening hand. The Authority of the Consuls. The Split Up. Day of Judgment, wrathing the board, controlling the board. Elspeth as a win condition is nice to have in your opening hand. Beza, if you're running it, is also nice. And then Stock Up is also a pretty good one. So this one is running a lot of different cards. That's why I mentioned so many of them, is to try to give you the 16. There's a lot to pick and choose from. And with control archetypes in general, you generally don't want to mulligan as hard as you would in an aggro strategy. Number 6 in Tier 3. So by no means is this a bad deck. Again, this is one of some people's favorite archetypes, Jeskai Artifacts. But when we look at it over the 2,800 matches of last week, it was 52.6% as a win rate. So it struggled a little bit. If we compare it to week 5, we do see that this has gone back to week 4's list, which is the one that's running fewer of the planets. We're dropping a Plains. We're dropping one of the white planets, the Adagia Windswept Bastion. We're also dropping a Fabled Passage, 3 Braided Nets, 2 Uthros Titanic God Core, which is the blue planets, and bringing in an additional Enigma Jewel. 4 copies of Authority of the Consuls, which reflects there being more aggro and Boros Burn on the ladder, and an island, or 3 islands. Sorry. It is favored against Mono White Lifegain. It's a favored coin flip against Izzet Prowess. It's a coin flip against Mono Red Aggro. It's weak against Boros Burn and Azorius Control. The opening hand, you're looking for Authority of the Consuls if you are running it. The United Battlefront. Play Fired Bricks. Pinnacle Starcage. And in case you aren't running the Authority of the Consuls, the 5th one is your Simulacrum Synthesizer. Number 7 is Gruul Landfall, also in Tier 3, with 940 matches and 53.4% as a win rate. If we compare this one to week 5, we see no changes. To those who are really paying attention, the win rate for Gruul Landfall was higher than Jeskai Artifacts, but because the sample size was substantially smaller, it loses in the rank. It's favored against Izzet Prowess, it's a coin flip against Jeskai Artifacts, and it's an unfavored coin flip against Mono Black Demons, Mono Green Landfall, and Mono Red Aggro. It is weak against Mono White Lifegain. The opening hand, you're looking for the Llanowar Elves, the Mossborn Hydra, Saw's Chocobo. Tifa Lockhart actually got into the 4th spot instead of the 5th spot, and the 5th spot then being Bristly Bill, Spinesower. And then number 8 is Mono Green Landfall, and was in tier 4, and is barely squeaking by the 50% win rate with 1,200 matches and a win rate of 50.4%. So if we compare this one to week 3, which was the last time that we talked about it in the top 8, we see no changes to the list. It is very similar to Gruul Landfall, so it's favored against Izzet Prowess, it's a coin flip against Jeskai Artifacts, it's an unfavored coin flip against Mono White Lifegain and Mono Black Demons, and then it's weak to Mono Red Aggro. So you see a slight variation in what the decks are weak to, depending on whether or not you're running the World Souls Rage. So the opening hand for this one is very similar, if not exactly the same. You're looking for Llanowar Elves, the Saw's Chocobo, the Mossborn Hydra, and Bristly Bill. Okay, now on to best of 3. So we're seeing a lot of Mono Red explode. After we saw the tournament in Orlando last week be taken down by Mono Red Aggro, it of course has sparked some interest in the archetype. So this is Mono Red Aggro by Eggy Benny. Won the Standard Challenge on Saturday with a first place win, 7 wins and 1 loss. And if we compare this one to last week's Orlando champion, we see no changes to the list, nor do we see a change to the sideboard. But I'm going to include it in the video just in case you missed last week's video. And second place in the Saturday's tournament went 5-3 was Izzet Cauldron by Dance Yao. Compared to week 5, we see a very similar list to what was run in Orlando. So we've dropped a Mountain, a Thundering Falls, an Island, 1 Annul from the main, as well as the 3 Quantum Riddlers. Both Annul and Quantum Riddlers are typically included as a hate against the mirror match in Izzet Cauldron. Because we're seeing more Mono Red, I expect you to see less specific hate for Izzet Cauldron in the up-and-coming weeks. Instead, we're bringing in the Torch the Tower, which reflects the Mono Red Aggro, trying to slow that strategy down. Bringing in the 4th copy of the Steam Core Scholar. That one largely comes down to personal preference. 4th copy of Into the Floodmaw, though definitely similar to the Torch the Tower, is to slow your opponent down. And then we've got a Soulstone Sanctuary coming in, as well as a Broadside Barrage. The Broadside Barrage, we've seen this kind of be like a Scorching Shot, the Broodmaw, just some form of removal being started in the main. And then we have the 3rd copy of the Starting Town. In the best of 3 sideboard, we've dropped an Obliterating Bolt, 2 Torch the Towers, an Essence Scatter, and Into the Floodmaw, as well as a Bounce Off to bring in Disdainful Stroke. Which is one that you can use against like the Quantum Riddlers, right? Any 4 or more spell, it's nice to bring in the Disdainful Strokes. We've got the 2nd copy of Annul in the sideboard for against the mirror match. We've also got Spell Pierce, which can help out against the Wraths of like Azorius Control, Broadside Barrage in the sideboard here, and then the 2 Quantum Riddlers, so 3 total, but 2 additional copies of the Quantum Riddler have been moved from the main to the sideboard that you would bring in if you are against the Izzet Cauldron mirror match. Okay, first place on Saturday, the other tournament, went 8-1, was Azorius Control by JTL5. And if we compare this one, we have to go back to week 2, which is the last time that we talked about Azorius Control in the tournament winners over the weekend. And we can see that they dropped a Restless Anchorage, an Island, 2 Overlord of the Mistmoors, the 4 copies of Stock Up. So we're not running any Stock Ups, which is pretty crazy. We've got 3 less Meringue River Regents, as well as 3 Pinnacle Star Cages. So this one is leaning more into the Ugin strategy, so we're bringing in Candy Trail as a way to find it as well as trigger it. Hornlock Whale for the +2 Hornlock Whales for the win con and disruption against aggro. Sunken Citadel for the land, being able to more readily trigger your manlands and your fountain port. We've also got an additional copy of 3 Steps Ahead. bringing in the 4th copy of Fountain Port, which if you're going to bring in the Sunken Citadels makes sense. 2 copies of Ugin, Eye of the Storms as a win condition. 1 copy of Ultima for a little bit of artifact hate, and the 1 Quantum Riddler. Again, this was pretty good against the red decks since they tend to cap out at 5 toughness. And then we've got the 4th copy of Consult the Star Charts and 1 additional Seam Rip for against aggro strategies. The best of 3 sideboard also got a tweak, so we've dropped a Beza, a Seam Rip, an Overlord of the Mistmoors, 2 Clarion Conquerors, which was kind of the deck's choice against Izzet Cauldron, 2 Kusel's Flankers, and 2 Tashana's Tidebinders. I think the Kusel's Flankers were because in week 2 we were seeing some exploration of mill decks. But, you know, Kusel's Flankers also helps you answer them reanimating or picking out the Vivi from the graveyard. So anyway, we're running Chimmel. This one kind of helps out against other counter spells, gives you kind of late game inevitability. We've got the 4 copies of the Enduring Innocence to really try to outdraw our opponents who are trying to answer our stuff 1 for 1. We've got an additional 2 copies of Voice of Victory if we're coming up against something that is a draw-go deck. And we've got 1 Ultima in the sideboard, as well as an additional Quantum Riddler. If you're feeling like it's advantageous to bring those in. Generally, like I mentioned, Quantum Riddler is better against red removal, and then, you know, Sweepers are better against mid-range and artifact-based decks. Well, I should say Ultima is better against artifact-based decks. All right, so we have 2nd place was Orzhov Pixie by MJ23. And I just want to make a quick note that for the first time that I've really noticed, the 2nd tournament on Saturday didn't consist of a majority of Izzet Cauldron. Instead, it was a majority of mono-red aggro. So we've seen a flip, right? And the majority of this week's videos will be mono-red aggro as well. So maybe we get ready for some mono-red aggro. Anyway, so this is Orzhov Pixie or Orzhov Self-Bounce. It is a new archetype. We haven't really seen Orzhov Pixie for quite some time, so we'll just kind of do a quick sweep of it. Took down 2nd place with a 7-2 record. So what I like about this is that we're seeing a home for Elegy Acolyte as well as the Cosmogrand Zenith. Both of these have been very good performing, very top performers of Edge of Eternities in draft. So like to see their inclusion. We have the win condition of Elspeth Stormslayer. We have the Archenemy's Charm. We're not running the Demon Wall because we're leaning a little bit further away from the Unholy Annex and the Demon synergies, which I've talked about kind of synergizes with the Archenemy's Charm. But this card is so much easier to cast when you're in mono black. You need 23 sources of black to cast this 90% of the time. There are 21 in this deck though, so well done on the mana base, right? So this is more like a turn 5 play. Anyway, we've got removal with nowhere to run, edicts off the momentum breaker. We've got the Planeswalker enchantment hate, that's Get Lost. Sun Pearl Kirin, as well as the Nurturing Pixie, allows us to bounce things like our Nowhere to Run, as well as our Seam Rips. So we've got enchantment-based removal. Tiny Bones Joins Up allows us to have some synergies off of the legendary creatures, which there isn't very much in here. It doesn't make your opponent discard, though, so you can use that with the Nurturing Pixie and the Sun Pearl Kirin to hate on your opponent's hand. And then Tragic Trajectory, if you have stuff going into the graveyard or being exiled, then it's really good sorcery speed removal. And then the best of 3 sideboard, we have an additional copy of Get Lost. We have the Graveyard Hate, Rest in Peace, Shoot the Sheriff. So, yeah, for non-outlaw creatures, kind of gives you like a go for the throat vibe. Beza, the Bounding Spring for against aggro, Duress against control archetypes. Pinnacle Starcage also against the aggro board flood strategies. And then we do have the Unholy Annex, so we can lean into drawing if our opponent is weak against that strategy. And again, like the 6/6 flyer and Unholy Annex can be problematic for certain decks, right? That can kind of cap out at dealing 5 damage. So mono red aggro took down 1st place on Sunday, and I didn't actually write down the record, so I apologize for that. But if we compare this one to the Orlando deck, we can see that they kind of went in a different direction. So they dropped the Lightning Strike, 2 Mountains, and a Braid, the 3 Scorching Shots, the 4 Rock-Face Villages, and the 2 Sunspine Links, and the 4 Emberheart Challengers to bring in a Spire Bluff Canal, and the Obliterating Bolt, and the 4 Scalding Vipers. We're also seeing a Witchstalker Frenzy come in, and we see Ogre bringing 2 copies of Odra Exonal Deepest Might. And I think I was actually playing against Mythic Mike last week. I bumped into him in Platinum just on an early match while he was grinding up to Mythic, I'm sure. I think he was exploring this deck, right? But anyway, all these little 1 pings that you can do off of the Razorkin Needlehead and the Scalding Viper, then hit for 4, right? And so that's kind of a cool little synergy, and curious to see, fun to see it take down a first place. So we also see some Fire Annihilation coming in here, which is specific hate for like the Planisphere and Izzet Cauldron, any equipment strategies. Boros Mice, I guess, also has some, which we saw for a little split second there. Soulstone Sanctuary bringing in a 3rd copy, bringing in the 4 copies of the River Pyre Verge. My apologies. And then a Tursa Light Shatter for a little bit of filtering. The best of 3 sideboard, we dropped a Vengeful Possession, which is another way to kind of answer the go tall of like the Planisphere. Chandra Spark Hunter, which is an alternative, is a way to get around Wraths by bringing in the Planeswalker. We're dropping 3 copies of the Obliterating Bolt in the sideboard, so we have the 1 in the main, but nothing in the sideboard. And instead, we're running a Braid for a little bit of Izzet Cauldron hate. We're bringing in the Sunspine Links from the main into the sideboard. We bring this in against a lot of decks that are playing a lot of non-basics, and then running an additional copy of Fire Magic. So we have 3 copies of Fire Magic to punish the go wide strategies. So I just had to look it up. It was actually an undefeated 9-0 victory on Sunday by Ola Chico. So very cool. Okay, and then we have the 3rd version of Mono Red Aggro this week, and this one is more closely related to the Orlando list. So if we compare this one went 6-3 for the 2nd place, and if we compare it to the one in Orlando, we can see that they dropped a Sunspine Lynx, won a Braid from the main to bring in a 4th copy of the Lightning Strike, as well as the 4th copy of the Nova Hellkite. And the best of 3 sideboard, we have 1 less a Braid in the sideboard, 1 less Nova Hellkite. Again, there's less Izzet Cauldron, more mono red, so we're seeing a little shift from that. Also dropping the 2 Magebane Lizards, which reflects that, and the 2 Fire Magics. And instead, we're seeing the 3 cases of the Crimson Pulse, be able to outdraw if our opponent is trying to answer our stuff, 1 for 1. We've also got the Sunspine Lynx, 2 copies in the sideboard. 1 additional copy of Sunspine Lynx for a total of 2 in the sideboard, and then running Thunder Magic for single spot removal instead of the go wide of Fire Magic. And I like this. The Thunder Magic is able to blow up a really big Vivi or something that has the Planisphere on it type of thing. So, I guess for 7-2, you can blow up one of the Quantum Riddlers. So. Anyway, thanks for listening to my ramblings throughout the weeks. I know there's a little bit less interest in week 6, but we'll be back in a couple of weeks to talk about what's happening with Spider-Man, and I will take a much-deserved break for a little while here. Again, I will probably drop in on Sunday to talk about meta breakers. If I do find something interesting, it'll be a short video. They usually are quite a bit shorter than the reviews. And again, if you want to help support the channel, the best way to do that is by becoming a YouTube member. It does not cost very much, I hope. I know that money can be tight, though, so I appreciate those who have helped support me. So take care, everybody. Good luck with your RCQs. Good luck climbing the ladder, and I will see you all for early access Spider-Man. Usually I'll post some constructed deck to YouTube, and if you want to come by and hang out on Twitch, I'll probably be on there too, just kind of schedule permitting. So take care.